You wrote to my daughter. You wormed your way onto my place with a lie. I forged your name. She had nothing to do with it. I'll be gone within the hour. Nobody ever put my name on a piece of paper and meant come.
The letter had been carried so long its edges had gone soft as felt, furred at the corners where a man's thumb had worried it through 6 weeks of walking. Callum Reyes held it out to her now, on the church steps, in the pale spring sun, with half the town watching, and the cottonwood seed drifting down between them like slow snow. "Nobody ever sent for me." His voice came out rough, like it hurt to use. 9 farms in 9 years, and I was always the extra man. The one they kept when the harvest was good and turned off when it wasn't. Nobody ever put my name on a piece of paper and meant come. Della Hart looked at the letter, at her own hand in it, at the ink stain that never fully washed from the side of her finger. There were things between them still unpaid, a silence she had let stand too long, and both of them knew it. "You sent for me," he said. Not a question. A thing he needed to hear out loud. "I did," she answered. "Let me take you back then, to the mud and the silence, to a quiet woman's secret that walked 100 miles to her door, and to the one wrong that very nearly turned it back down the road for good." The spring of 1879 came late and mean to the Salina Valley. The thaw broke all at once in early April, and for 3 days the whole country was mud. Red Kansas mud that sucked at a boot and held it, that took a wagon to the axle and dared you to argue. The Salina itself let go of its ice on the second night, and the sound of it carried clear to the Hart place, a long, grinding groan. The river shrugging off winter, ice cakes big as barn doors turning over in the dark. Ezra Hart heard it from his porch and did not go in. He was 58 that spring, a broad man gone stiff in the hands, and he had run this ranch alone since his wife went into the ground, and his sons went west, and never wrote. Alone, except for his daughter. Della kept his books and his kitchen, and, though he'd not have said it, kept him. She was 23, dark-haired, quiet the way still water is quiet, not empty, only deep and not showing it. The town had a word for her, or rather had no word for her, which was worse. Plain, they said, when they said anything. Old Hart's girl. As if she were a fixture of the place, like the well or the windbreak, and not a person who lay awake. What the town did not know, what her own father did not know, was that on winter nights when the house had gone cold and dark, Della Hart wrote letters. She had answered an advertisement in the Salina paper back in February. 3 lines a young man had placed, seeking steady work, willing to travel, no drink, good with stock. She had read those 3 lines a dozen times by lamplight, something in the plainness of them. A man asking for so little and expecting less. She had written back in her father's name, because a man would answer a rancher and not a woman. And she had told him the Hart place needed a hand for spring, and there was a bunk and there were meals, and if he was steady he could come. She had signed it E. Hart, and told herself it was only sense. The ranch did need a hand. Her father was too proud to hire and too old to do without. She had not told herself the rest, that she had chosen this one out of all of them, that she had felt, reading 3 plain lines, the pull of a fellow creature who had also learned to want quietly. He came in the mud, on foot, with the letter in his coat. Ezra saw him first from the yard and reached for the axe handle out of habit. A stranger walking in off the Salina road, canvas roll on his shoulder, hat crusted, boots red to the knee. Young, 25 maybe. He stopped at a respectful distance and took off his hat, which was the first thing that made Ezra ease his grip. "Mr. Hart? Who's asking?" "Callum Reyes." He drew the letter out slow, the way you'd move around a nervous horse. "You wrote for a hand, spring work. I've come to take it, if it's still open." Ezra took the paper. "Read it." His brow drew down like weather coming. "I never wrote this." The silence that followed was the kind you could put your hand into. Callum went very still. His jaw set, and he drew one slow breath through his nose, the way a man does when he means not to show that the ground has just gone out from under him, a thing he'd trained himself to do, and done often. He looked at the letter in Ezra's fist. He looked at his own muddy boots. "Then I've come a long way on a mistake," he said. "I'm sorry to have troubled you." He was already turning when Della spoke from the doorway. She had come out at the sound of a strange voice, and she had seen, in one heartbeat, everything. The letter, the furred edge of it, her own hand inside her father's fist. Her throat closed. The truth was right there, and she could not push it past the old habit of silence, not with her father's back gone rigid. "He walked from Salina, Pa." Her voice was low. "It's coming on dark, and the river's up. Whoever wrote it, the hay barn's still half down from the wind, and you can't mend it and calve the herd both." Ezra looked at his daughter a long moment. He was a hard man, but not a foolish one, and every word she'd said was true, and the ledger she kept had told him the same for a month. He handed the letter back to Callum, not gently. "One night in the barn," he said. "You work tomorrow. I'll see what you're worth. You steal. I'll know it before you're off my land." He went inside. Callum stood, holding his letter. He looked up at Della, and there was something in his face she hadn't earned yet and didn't know what to do with. A plain gratitude. The gratitude of a man for whom a single night's shelter was a mercy worth remembering. "Thank you, ma'am," he said. She only nodded and went in, because if she'd stayed 1 second more she'd have told him, and she wasn't ready to be seen yet. That night the barn was cold enough to see your breath. Callum spread his roll in the empty stall and lay listening to the river work at its ice, and told himself not to hope. Hope was a thing that cost, and he'd been made to pay before. 9 farms. He counted them sometimes the way other men counted blessings. The Dunmores, who'd kept him 3 seasons and called him boy the whole time. The Kesslers, who'd let him go the week the twins were born because 2 mouths cost more than 1 hand. Everywhere the same lesson, gently and not gently taught. He was the extra man, useful and never chosen. You did not, if you were Callum Reyes, allow yourself to want a place. Places were borrowed. You gave them back. He had almost gone to sleep when the stall door eased open. He came up on one elbow. There was no one. Only, set just inside on the straw, a flannel bundle and a tin cup. He put his hand to the bundle and found it warm. A brick, hot from the stove, wrapped careful in a square of old flannel so it would give its heat slow through the night. The cup was milk, still holding the warmth of the cow. He looked toward the house, a single window, lamp just gone dark. He held the warm brick against his chest in the dark, like a man holding something he was afraid to be caught with, and he did not sleep for a long while, and it was not the cold that kept him. It became a thing between them that had no words in it. He never thanked her for the brick, because to thank her was to say it out loud and make it stop. She never spoke of it, because to speak of it was to admit the rest. But every night the flannel bundle was there, warm, and every morning the tin cup stood rinsed and set on the stall post, and in that small unsaid traffic, a courtship went on that neither of them would have dared to call by name. By day he worked. Lord, how he worked. He mended the hinge that had been dragging the barn door 2 winters. He set the corral rail that had rotted through, and Della noticed the new cedar of it, fresh planed and pale against the gray weathered wood, the way you'd notice one true note in a room of noise. He oiled the harness that had gone stiff, and the smell of neat's foot oil hung about the tack room like something hopeful. He never made much of any of it. She would find a thing quietly right that had been quietly wrong for years, and know who had done it, and say nothing, and he would say nothing, and her father, if he noticed at all, put it down to a hired man earning his keep. But Ezra was noticing something else. He was noticing that his daughter's face had changed, that she set out 3 plates now, and did not put one back, that she laughed once, low, at something the hand said by the woodpile, and the sound of it went through the old man like a blade, because he had not heard it since her mother died. And a guarded love is a suspicious love. Ezra had lost a wife and 2 sons to the wide world, and he had made a fist of his heart around the one child left, and he mistook the fear of losing her for the duty of protecting her. It was the deep of April when the roan cow went down to calve wrong. Callum found her at dusk, hindquarters heaving. The calf turned inside her, and he knew, as any stockman knows, that turned means trouble. The calf, and likely the cow behind it, unless a hand could go in and set it right in the little time before the cow gave out. He shouted for Ezra, and Ezra was 2 miles off at the far fence. So it was Della who came running through the red mud with the lantern. Della who took one look and did not flinch. "I've helped my mother with this," she said, already shedding her shawl, already rolling her sleeve past the elbow. "Hold the lamp, talk to her, keep her from thrashing." And she went to work. Small hands where his big ones could not fit, feeling in the close dark of the animal, for a leg, a hoof, the turned shoulder. Sweat stood on her lip. The cow groaned, and she leaned her whole slight weight against the heave of it, and did not let go. "There," she breathed. "There it is. Come on now." Callum held the lantern and held the cow's great head against his knee and watched Della Hart do a thing most men in that valley couldn't have done, and something in his chest that had been shut a very long time came open all at once. The calf came in a rush, steaming into the straw, and for one terrible moment lay still, then shook its ears and drew a great shuddering breath. The cow lifted her head to lick it. Della sat back on her heels in the muck, arms red past the elbow, spent, her hair come loose, and she was laughing and near to crying both. Callum looked at her across the lantern light, and he was not careful with his face anymore. "You," he said, and could not finish it. "There's not a soul in this county knows what you are." She met his eyes, the ink-stained finger, the loose hair. "You do," she said. It was the nearest. Either had come to the truth, and it would have to hold them, because the truth came the hard way 3 days later. Ezra found the letters. He'd gone into her room for the lamp oil and found instead, in the bottom of her writing box, the draft of the advertisement answer in her own hand, and beneath it, a second letter, unsent, that said things a father is not ready to read. He came down onto the porch, white to the lips, the papers shaking in his fist, at the very hour Callum was crossing the yard from the barn. "You wrote to my daughter." Ezra's voice was low and hard. "You wormed your way onto my place with a lie, and you've been at her the whole while. I took you for a drifter, and I was right." Callum looked at the papers. He saw, in half a second, what they were. Saw Della frozen in the doorway behind her father. Saw the ruin coming down on her. The town's word for her made 10 times crueler. Unmarried woman who wrote for a man in the dark. And he did the only thing his whole life had taught him how to do. He took the blow so someone else wouldn't have to. "That's right," he said. "I wrote it. I forged your name. She'd nothing to do with it. I'll be gone within the hour." And Della said nothing. The old silence closed over her like the river over the ice. Her father's anger, the town's word, her own shame standing there in daylight. She could not push the truth up through all of it. And she let a good man lie himself off her land to save her. She let him be the extra man one more time, the one turned off when the season went bad. She saw him understand that she would not speak. She saw it land in him, the old lesson confirmed. Not chosen, never chosen. He gathered his roll and he did not look at her again, because if he had, he might have begged, and he had promised himself long ago he would never beg for a place. He walked out the Salina road in the red mud, and Della watched him go from the dark window where she'd once set a lamp, and put out no light at all. For 2 days she was a stone, and then her father, who could not sleep either, went out at dawn to sit on the porch and think on what he had done, and put his hand on the porch rail, and felt it hold. It had not held in 6 years. It had wobbled loose since before his wife died, and now it was firm, mended underneath with a fresh-planed cedar brace, pale against the old gray wood. He looked, and he saw the whole yard for the first time. The hinge that no longer dragged, the corral rail, the oiled harness, the hay barn half down from the wind, closed up tight and weather-tight with lumber he never remembered buying. A season of quiet service, done by a man who wanted no credit for it. Done, Ezra understood now, the way his daughter did things, silently, for love. Ruthie Combs came by that same morning with eggs, as she had for 30 years. and Ezra Hart was fool enough to say some hard thing about the man he'd run off. Ruthie set the eggs down and looked at him plain. "Ezra Hart, you old stump. That boy fixed my gate on his way through, and wouldn't take a nickel. Said a man ought to leave a place better than he found it, since he'd not be staying." She let that sit. "Della's had color in her face since Easter, and you're the only man in this valley didn't see why. You had a son come to your door on his own 2 feet, and you sent him back down the road." She picked up her basket. "Your Sarah would be ashamed." Ezra sat a long time after she'd gone. Then he went in and found his daughter, and did the hardest thing a guarded man can do. He held out the letters, and he said, "Was it you?" And Della, at last, unlocked her throat. "It was me, Pa, all of it. He lied to keep the shame off me, and I let him, and it's the worst thing I've ever done." She was crying now, the way still water finally moves. "I don't want to be old Hart's girl. I want to have written that letter and been glad of it. I want him to know I chose him." Ezra looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he went and hitched the wagon himself. They found Callum on the Sunday, at the little plank church in town, where he'd taken a day's work helping raise a lean-to for the parson, before he moved on for good. The whole congregation was letting out into the pine and cold smell of the morning, the cottonwoods along the road already loosing their seed on the warm wind. Ezra Hart walked up to the young man in front of every gossip in the county, and put out his stiff hand, and said, "I did you a wrong. My daughter's got something to say, and I'll thank the town to hear it." And Della came down the church steps with the 6-week carried letter in her hand. She'd taken it back from him that ruinous night without his knowing, or he'd left it. Neither ever was sure. And she held it out where the light could show her own writing, and her own ink-stained finger, and she said it loud enough for Ruthie and the parson, and every soul who'd ever called her plain. "Nobody ever sent for me," Callum said when he understood. 9 farms in 9 years, and I was always the extra man. "You sent for me," he said. "I did," she answered. "I saw 3 plain lines in a paper, and I chose you out of the whole world, and I was too afraid to say so. I'm not afraid now. I'd choose you at the top of my voice." He took the letter from her hand. He looked at it, furred and soft from all his walking, carried 100 miles against his heart, and for the first time in his life, Callum Reyes let himself have a place, and did not give it back. They were wed in that same plank church before the cottonwoods had finished. Ezra gave her away with a hand that shook, and gained, in the giving, the son the wide world had taken from him. The roan cow's calf grew fat in the summer grass. And the letter that a quiet woman had written in the cold and dark, believing no one would ever choose her, the letter a man carried until its edges went to felt. That letter, Della framed and hung on the parlor wall, where the morning light could reach it, so that neither of them would ever again mistake what was theirs for something borrowed. She kept one other thing, in the bottom of the writing box, a brick, wrapped in a square of old flannel. He found it there years later, and asked her why she'd saved a common brick, and she only smiled, and would not say, because some things are better kept than spoken, the way she'd learned to give her heart, before she'd learned to say the words. Here is the whole of it, if you'll take it from an old voice by the fire. We spend our lives looking down the road for the thing that will save us, and half the time, it is already inside the house, mending our porch in the dark, warming a cold room a brick at a time, asking for so little and worth so much. The best thing is already beside you. Don't wait to say so.